Okay, good morning, everybody. Today we are going to look at at CPE level writing. So we're going to be doing some very advanced work. I hope to talk about a few themes which are very close to my heart. One of them is parallel structure. I talk about it a lot, especially when people ask, how can I improve my English? And the reason I talk about parallel structure a lot is because it really is the way you stand out from the crowd, from other essays. If you want your essay to stand out, then it ought to use parallel structure. And I say this just because I think any great writer uses parallel structure. They all do. I don't know if they realize that they're doing it or not, but they certainly all use parallel structure. And if you think about it, think about how it can be used, you will write clearer essays, I promise. And we will see this. We're going to look at two essays from an Italian student. So let's call him the Italian stallion. We had the Brazilian physician last week with his essays, and now we're going to look at this guy's essays, this Italian guy's essays. And I hope you can see that actually we all make very similar mistakes when we're writing these essays. Although I must say, I thought these two essays were excellent essays. They're very strong, and they are not, you may be surprised to hear, the strongest that this student has written. He has actually done better than this, but I think that he did these two under exam conditions. So he did them under pressure because of the time limit, and of course, that will make it harder. So good morning, David, and good morning to the other 12 people who are here. So let's get started, and I'm going to read through the task first. So the task is it's part one where we rephrase two different viewpoints, where we talk about two different viewpoints and reword their position. So let's have a read of them. So the first one is a world without risk. Compared to what it used to be, the world has become a relatively safe place. Life is no longer a dangerous adventure. Instead, it is dull, dull, dull. Not that many of us no longer face real danger. We pretend it's there. Now that many of us no longer face real danger, we pretend it's there. We get our thrills from imagining the world is more dangerous than it is. Newspapers and news bulletins contribute to this, giving people the impression that even as they huddle in their armchairs, they are really up against raw and frightful threats. This may sound familiar to some of you. I think this is actually very true. And I think we can all think of a few real things that are around at the moment that show that we really do imagine threats because we live in such a safe world. Okay, and the other opinion is taking risks. We hear stories over and over again about the people who reach the end of their lives and regret the fact that they never took any risks, that they never challenged life and stepped out and tried something that was beyond their current existence. Now, I want you to just quickly notice something here. The presence of the word that after the comma. Sometimes some students learn never use a comma before that, and actually that's incorrect. This sentence is right. You can use a comma before that, especially when you are listing subordinate clauses. And that's exactly what we're doing here. The fact that they never took any risks and that they never challenged life. This is parallel structure. Using that twice, it helps the reader understand that this is a list of subordinate clauses. And so it makes for a very clear and precise essay. It's good. It's a very good tactic to use in this exam. So if people take care of every possible outcome of risk before they're willing to even take it, they turn the risk into a calculated venture and try to control it, losing most of the potential benefit of taking the risk. Risk can make us more mature, wiser, and stronger. Okay, so now we're going to look at the essay. I'll just check that there haven't been any other questions. No? So good morning, Sabi. Good morning. So let's have a look at what our Italian student has written. So human societies seem to be safer than they were decades or centuries ago, and people tend to moan about the dullness of the everyday life and to crave for thrilling adventure. Okay, I've noticed another mistake actually that I missed, which is that article mistake. So let's talk about the mistakes in this first part. And I thought it started well. I thought this was a good introduction. But human societies seem to be safer than, now we can't just say than was decades ago. We need to say than they were decades or centuries ago. And it's because than, think of than like a conjunction. A lot of the time, especially if you want to get it all in parallel, you want to make sure that the comparison, when you're using than, that very often you want a whole clause after it. I think it works better. And you can't miss the subject if you've got a whole clause after it. So we're referring to human societies again. So we say than they, human societies, were decades or centuries ago. Okay, and people tend to moan about the dullness of everyday life. Now, yeah, everyday life, we don't mean a specific form of everyday life. So it can't be the everyday life. It must be without an article. Now, I also recommend adding a to in here. And I hope you can see it's all because of parallel structure. And I'm going to quickly explain what happens if you don't put that to in there, why it's worse style, yeah, why it's not so clear. So if we miss the to, we get people tend to moan about the dullness of everyday life and crave. And the problem with crave is it starts to sound like the second thing in a list of everyday life and crave. It suddenly it's not clear that this is a verb. If you put the to in front of it, it makes it very clear that you've got a list of to plus infinitive phrases. Yeah, they tend to moan about the dullness of everyday life, number one, and to crave for thrilling adventure, number two. So it's much clearer that you've got a list of to verb phrases, and if you don't put that to in there, it might sound like life and crave, and we don't want it to. Yeah, basically, because you've got a lot of other modifiers in after the first to moan, because you've got a lot of other modification, it sounds good to put the to back in the second part of the list, because it just makes it clearer that you've got balance, that you've got to plus infinitive verb phrases. Okay, so that doesn't have to necessarily be there, but I recommend it. I highly recommend it. It will make it easier for the examiner to read. And remember, this is CPE level, so it's top advanced level, and we really want to impress at such a level. Okay, and another thing which isn't really a mistake, but I recommend it for better style, is maybe remove that S. Yeah, he wrote, and to crave fulfilling adventures, which is okay, but it's possible to think of adventure in an uncountable sense, to crave for adventure, to love adventure. And because we've got moan about the dullness, singular, to crave for adventure, singular. So it's more parallel if you take that S off. And for that reason, it reads a little bit easier. I hope that's clear. Okay, now we've got the first text suggests that since people are now living in boring societies, definitely don't have an A before a plural. Yeah, definitely get rid of that. They tried to find new excitement. We don't often see excitements in the plural. So they try to find new excitement, imagining the world more dangerous than it is. Now, we've got not only, and by the way, I do like that participle phrase. I like participle phrases, and the student uses them very well. So well done. Now he's got a correlative conjunction, which is always something you ought to include in your essays. They sound very good. They sound intelligent. But with negative adverbials like not only but also, you must remember inversion. Now, inversion is another thing that I recommend you include in your essays, especially at CPE level, because it shows sophistication in your mode of expression. And we, of course, want to impress in an exam like the CPE. So we've got to have not only can people and not people can. Not only can people enjoy watching documentaries about wildlife or news about wars that are taking place all over the world, comma, participle phrase, simply sitting in their armchairs. Now, this is more natural. If you sit on if they're sitting on their armchairs, I think of sitting on the arm of the armchair, because that's on. in is between the arms. It's right in the armchair. And you can see that this is the case because it was actually an expression from the original we had here, giving people the impression that even as they huddle in their armchairs. So do keep an eye out for things like that. If you're not sure of the preposition, it might be in the question. So simply sitting in their armchairs, but also they can play video games and consoles, comma, such as. Use such as to mean, for example, in these academic essays, and avoid like, which does mean, for example, but it's much more informal. And so I wouldn't put it in an academic essay. Certainly don't include it in academic essays. Use such as in preference to like. So such as PlayStation or Xbox, and so have the impression of taking part in magic worlds or battlefields. That's a great sentence. I liked it. Additionally, the second text raises the issue of people that do not take any risks during their lifetime, regretting it at the end of their life. Look at that nice participle phrase at the end again. Good style. I like it. I agree with the author when he says that preventing people from any possible risks does not help them to become much stronger and wiser. Good. Learning from mistakes is the best way to grow as a man or woman. Now, actually, I want to just go below here because this whole part was unclear to me. This was the only part of the essay where I felt that the essay will lose marks, quite a lot of marks on this part, just because it was too unclear, unfortunately. So let's have a look how I changed it. Because I was confused about this, and avoid new experiences or excessively control, which means avoid. So the problem was parallel structure. Yeah, let me cut to the chase. Yeah, let me get straight to the point. The problem was parallel structure. Look how I've changed this sentence. Learning from mistakes, that's a gerund, yeah? Learning from mistakes is the best way to grow as a man or a woman, and avoiding, gerund again, just like learning, yeah? We're keeping them in parallel. We're keeping our verb phrases in parallel. And it's because there's an and here, and it's conjunctions that tell you that you need to think about parallel structure, because you need parallel structure in a list. What we've really got here is a list of gerund phrases. So learning from mistakes is the best way to grow as a man or woman, and avoiding new experiences or excessively controlling the environment in which we live means foregoing the potential benefits. Notice I've got avoiding, controlling, foregoing. I used foregoing here to avoid using avoiding. Yeah, I didn't want to use avoiding twice, and foregoing works very well. It means going without. Yeah, and so it means losing, yeah, missing the potential benefits. So yeah, that one I think sounds a lot better. Because then we've got gerund as the subject of means, yeah, avoiding new experiences. Then we've got a conjunction, or controlling the environment in which we live means foregoing the potential benefits, and that's the object of means. So I hope you can see that thinking about parallel structure is how we tidy up that sentence. It's how we actually get a good understanding of what the writer means. Yeah, if you use that parallel structure, you do get a good understanding. You get a very clear message across to your reader. So good morning, Agnitska, and good morning, Vera, and good morning, Maria. So let's go back to here. So we've cleared up that minor bit of confusion that was there. So on the whole, I agree with the two authors. We live in societies that tend to protect their citizens and do not spur them to make more mistakes in order to learn from them. Instead of creating virtual worlds in which people pretend to live, we should encourage them to go outside and take risks, thinking about the benefits that they will obtain. Now, it's a nice conclusion, but I will say one thing. I found it odd that the writer had written, on the whole, I agree with the two authors, and then gone on to only agree with one of them, as far as I can see, which was the first author who said that who criticised living in a world without risk. I suppose no, both of them criticised living in a world without risk. Sorry, no, and maybe that's why I haven't written anything about it. I'm happy with it. That's a good conclusion, a nice conclusion. But let's quickly talk about the mistake. We should encourage blah, 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 and take, not taking, because then we've got parallel verb phrases. Yeah, you see how often I talk about it, and it's because we should X and Y. Yeah, we need that. We should is a modal verb, so we should infinitive and infinitive. And then you've got a nice participle phrase at the end, which sounds really good. So do think about parallel structure. And one more thing I wanted to mention here, I didn't think, concerning content, I didn't think that the writer had included or had developed his second paragraph enough. I felt that the writer could have used some concrete examples of times or of people who became stronger and wiser from taking risks, because that's the argument. And so if the writer had included some information about a relative, a wise or brave or strong relative who became that way from taking a lot of risk, then that would have made it a better essay. I think it would have made it a stronger essay, and it's because it would have made this paragraph stronger. Okay, so I hope that that's all clear. Let's perhaps go on to a second essay, but we're going to have to do this quickly, and I'm going to have to stop sharing and then start sharing again. So stop sharing and now start sharing again. Can I do this all clearly and easily? Okay, looks like it's working. Just quickly check. Yeah, excellent. So let's look at the task. The task is an international student magazine has invited its readers to submit a letter arguing for immediate action on a key environmental issue. They do so many times, so many times they're asking you about the environment. You've got to remember that learning English at Cambridge University means being brainwashed about the environment constantly, whether you're studying nuclear physics or French, I don't know, the history of the French Revolution, you'll probably be doing something on the environment at some point. And so do learn environment vocab, even if it is ridiculously dull and boring. Do learn it and be ready for it, because they'll probably ask you something about the environment. So you decide to write a letter briefly describing an environmental problem that concerns you, explaining why you are arguing for immediate action and recommending appropriate measures to rectify the situation. Write your letter. Okay, so again, this is a very good letter. Let's have a look. Dear Sir, Madam, I'm writing in response to the appeal that, or which in British English anyway, in American English they will want that, but that or which appeared in your magazine on environmental issues. So we definitely need a relative pronoun, because this is a relative clause describing the appeal. I'm very sensitive to these kind of problems, and in particular regarding the city in which I live, Milan. Milan is an industrial city, and I think we ought to pay more attention to environmental issues that have risen over the past few years, such as air pollution and the disappearance of green areas. Now, that's a great start. Shame you forgot the relative pronoun, because that's a really good start. But don't forget, I've mentioned this to this student before, but all you guys, I want to say the same thing to everybody else. Remember, if there is a gerund, because the student used a gerund here, the disappearing of green areas. If you're using a verb as a noun, however, if there is already an existing noun form, and with the verb disappear, we have disappearance. Yeah, that's already an existing noun form. So if a noun form exists, never use the gerund in preference to the noun form. Always use the noun form. Yeah, never use the gerund. And so here we need the disappearance of green areas, and not the disappearing of green areas. I hope that's clear to everybody. Yeah, if there is a noun, use it. Don't use the gerund. Yeah, because if the noun exists, like, I think we had this in another essay. I think we had it in one of the Brazilian physician's essays. I think that he wrote consuming instead of consumption. Yeah, and consumption is an existing noun form, so it must be used. So I don't know, if we want to say something like overconsumption is terrible for society, yeah, something like that, we would never say overconsuming. We would always say overconsumption. So if the noun form exists, use it. Don't use the gerund. Okay, so let's keep going. In recent years, there has been a huge increase in the air pollution, or in air pollution in Milan. Missed that, guys, sorry, but do be careful with your articles. So in air pollution in Milan, due to the frequent or extensive or heavy use of cars and buses. Now, I didn't like massive. I don't think we say the massive use of. I think frequent, okay, but if you want to say extensive or heavy, they collocate very well with use. And by the way, if you're wondering where you can find these collocations, you can find them in Collocation Dictionaries, which are online. And so if you type in, I don't know, Collocation Dictionary, whoopsie daisy, let's get rid of that. If we just type in Collocation Dictionary, I'm pretty sure it will come up at the top. Yeah, I don't know if you can see what I'm writing here, but for example, this one, I'll just put up the link. That if you type in the word use into the search bar, you'll immediately come up with noun, and you'll immediately see considerable use of, extensive use of, heavy use of, and so that's where you find collocations. But obviously you can't do that in the middle of a CPE exam, and so it's not possible when you're under exam conditions. And I know that my student was when he wrote this. So buses, yeah, cars. So why not buses? It sounds strange to make a list of plural and singular when you can blatantly use plural and plural, and we do mean loads of cars and loads of buses. So let's say cars and buses, comma, which people use to go to work and to get around the city. Look, I like he's got to go and to get. So he's put 2 plus infinitive and 2 plus infinitive, which is nice and parallel. But do remember, we say to get around when we mean to travel around the city. We don't say to go around. We do say to get around. So that's a phrasal verb problem, but be aware of that. Okay, I changed this one a little bit because I couldn't understand it with having cars and buses used by so much. I thought really we wanted to say because cars and buses are used so much by so many people. I think that sounds better. So much by so many. Hear the repetition of the so and then the quantifier. Yes, so much by so many. It sounds like Churchill's so much by so many to so few. Yeah, you've heard that one before, I'm sure. And it's parallel. Okay, so the city's council has also allowed new construction projects in order to have more space to build new streets, meaning that several parks and green areas were removed. Now, I think have been is better here. And it's because if you look carefully, we start with in recent years, which is an unfinished period of time extending into the present. And so the writer's got has been, yeah? And then, okay, he's got people use in present simple because he's right. This is every day, every week, every year they use cars, buses to get around the centre. But he's then got, because cars and buses are used so much by the people, the city's council has also allowed. So again, present perfect, yeah? And what this means is that present perfect works much better here. It keeps it reminding the reader that this has an effect on people in the present, a negative effect, yeah? And so this is exactly what you're saying. This has had, and you use present perfect, yeah? So I would definitely use present perfect here. This has had double the negative effect, yeah? And we do say it like that. It's had double the effect. It's had triple the effect. Firstly, many more cars and buses have been used. Not much more cars and buses, yeah? Many more cars and buses. And I actually missed that. I'm sorry, I've got to apologise to my student. I did miss that one, and it's very often because I think I would probably say much more cars and buses, even though it's wrong. And so, unfortunately, I didn't recognise it at first glance. But yeah, many more cars and buses have been used. You're still using present perfect, which is excellent, to move around the city, making noise and polluting areas. Secondly, green areas which have a beneficial effect on air pollution. You have an effect on something, are disappearing. So here we've got a verb phrase. We've got present continuous. So are disappearing and not are disappeared. But maybe he means have disappeared, which would be fine as well. You could use present continuous, in which case they are still disappearing. Or you could use present perfect, which sounds like they have already disappeared. So in order to tackle these problems, I think the city's council should take action. Yeah, to take action is a verb phrase. It's fixed, and it means, you know, to do something about a problem. So take action and not take actions. It's just a collocation. I recommend imposing a ban on the use of cars on particular days of the week. I should put a that in there, sorry guys. On particular days of the week, so that people are forced to choose other means of transportation, such as bicycle or electric scooter. Moreover, I would suggest that the city's council allow, this is subjunctive, guys, suggest that he do something, suggest that the council do, that the council allow and not allows. Subjunctive will spice up your essay. It will make it get better marks. There's a lot of different constructions then that you're using. So for people that want to buy a bicycle, and that they, yeah, this is confusing without parallel structure, because without this and that they, we've got for people that want to buy a bicycle and build specific lanes for bicycles, but the people don't want to buy a bicycle and build specific lanes. We want that to say that I would suggest that the council blah 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 blah, and that the council build specific lanes. So we need to put this that they to make it parallel with the first that. Yeah, then we've got two subordinate clauses starting with that. I would suggest that blah 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 blah, comma, and that blah 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 blah. It makes it much clearer to read. I hope you can see that if you don't include that, then it sounds like people that want to buy a bicycle and build, but the people don't want to build anything. Okay, I guess that this type of measure would entice people to purchase more bicycles and use them to get around, yeah, not go around, instead of choosing cars. I'm waiting for your feedback, and I hope this letter will be published. People need to be more aware of these issues, and serious measures should be taken as soon as possible. That's a fantastic conclusion. No mistakes at the end there whatsoever. So well done. So notice that I've spoken a lot about parallel structure this morning, because it is how you write an advanced essay. It's how you improve your English, and including subjunctive, including inversion, that kind of thing will get your mark right up there at the top, as it should be. Okay, so we're going to stop here because we're going to go on to a different topic in a second. But that's all for the moment, but I will be back in about 5 minutes.